put the spotlight on India's horticulture sector then. Weather forecasting agencies including Skymet and IMD are expecting above normal southwest monsoon this season. Southwest monsoon, remember, arrived in Kerala on May 24 and then stalled for nearly 18 days before it resumed again. But what impact will this have on India's horticulture sector, and how is India's horticulture sector positioned for the next 3 to 5 years? To discuss exactly this, we now have Mr. T.K. Behera, Director ICAR, Indian Institute of Horticulture Research, now joining us. Sir, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us here on ET Now. First up, tell us how significant is the early arrival of monsoon for the overall horticulture sector this year? Is it expected to be a positive, or do you see risks involved because of early onset of monsoon?
As you know that because of the climate change, there is an erratic rainfall throughout this country. Sometimes the monsoon comes early, sometimes comes the late. But as I mentioned in the horticulture crops, we have the farmers, they have a different crops to cultivate. In that case, sometimes also it also helps us to have early those farmers already prepare their land and go for sowing and planting of the horticulture crops. For them, it is not a problem. But those are coming in the late when they have a field is not vacant and they have to again go for cultivating and sowing other cultural aspects of these cultural practices of the farms. I think they have to again go for some of the problems to have the sowing and then planting of the seedlings in the field. It will be difficult for them. In that case, as you mentioned, horticulture crops, particularly the plantation crops, or those are of perennial crops like fruits and perennial coconuts and other crops, I don't think any problems will come up. But for, as I mentioned about these vegetables and flower crops or any medicinal crops, we have a problem for that if there is early monsoon is coming, because farmers always prepared based on their monsoon availability of this in their zone. So in that case, we have to again think of but there is some problems also coming if early monsoon, because the farmers cannot grow the crops or sow the crops in the right time.
Understood. So that's as far as impact of early monsoon on the horticulture sector is concerned. But let's put the spotlight on the broader picture then. What is the current size of the industry and what is the projected growth rate for India's horticulture sector over the next 3 to 5 years? And if you can explain the growth levers for the industry going forward.
As mentioned, the growth of horticulture crops is around 7% we are expecting for this one. Even if the agriculture growth is not so much, but in horticulture sector, we have 7% growth is there for last 10 years. We are expecting of that one also of about 7% growth in the 6 to 7% growth in the horticulture sector, because as you know that horticulture, the crops are also very much of resistance to the vagaries of different type of climate change. They withstand some of the climate change, particularly higher rainfall and also the temperature conditions. They are some extent they are resistant to this one. I think that growth will also continue in the next 5-10 years. Yeah.
So growth of India's horticulture sector is expected to be strong for the next few years. But Mr. Behera, how are India's horticulture exports performing? If you can tell us what is the export picture at the moment, are we seeing any new markets or any new constraints that the industry is facing?
Yeah, as I mentioned, if you go to the horticulture, export is again increasing so much. But the thing is that there are some of the things we have to again think of. The horticulture, how to go for the export to be increased in this country. Because in that case, you have to, again, I mentioned three things we have to consider. One is that what we are growing, the conditions, that is the good agriculture practices is very important. In this country, we don't have so much of strategy, but we have already developed some strategic plan for good agriculture practices for growing of the different crops, whether the fruit crops or vegetable crops or flower crops, so that they can meet the requirement of the other country. If you see, we are growing, and also exports is taking place to the Middle East countries, Europe, and also America. In that case, we have to also meet their standards, because the standards of these particular crops and horticulture crops they are different from the different regions of this world. So we have to take care of that, which is the standard of these horticulture crops, which can be also go to the export market. Second thing is that we have to also think of the residual toxicity levels. Because it is very important that we are having all this country, we have a number of referral laboratories also done, where you have to also the chemicals, which are the chemical residues are there in the fruit crops or the fruits or the vegetables or any other flower crops also itself. We have to think of that residue should be in the minimal level, so that this our consignment, what we are sending to the different countries, can not be having any problems with them. The third thing is that we have to have a also particularly for post-harvest management of crop is very important, particularly packaging of these materials, also having these transportations of the materials to the different countries.
So India needs to ramp up as far as its standard of quality is concerned in order to ensure that higher exports are being done globally. But Mr. Behra, what role is technology playing in boosting productivity in horticulture? It could be precision farming, drones, any kind of evolution on account of these technological advancements that we are seeing in the horticulture industry?
In that case, we have a lot of technologies have been generated by Indian Institute of Horticulture Research, as well as the other horticulture institutes of this country. And they have different protocols for the different growing of the different crops. I think we have to go for the crop diversification, which is very important. It's not that monocrop is always successful, but we have to again diversify the crop so that some of the pests and diseases, other risks of this growing of this corn can be reduced. One thing. Second is that the use of, as you mentioned, resistant variety, because as I mentioned, there is today the climate change is coming up. So we have a lot of varieties, and particularly horticulture crops we developed resistance to different biotic and abiotic stresses, and that also can be taken up. And also the nutritionally rich variety is also very important, because as you mentioned, we in the country, we are having food secured, but not so much of nutritional secured. So horticulture sector is the one sector where we can go for nutritional security. For that, we have to also develop the varieties having nutri-dense type. In this case, you have to have the varieties which is rich in the minerals, the vitamins, and also other biotic compounds. So that is very important for us to have this type of variety. And all our ICAR institutes and the state agriculture universities also developed some of the varieties that should be in the that should come in the market, so that the nutritional things can also be taken up. Another important thing is that we have to also see that reducing the input cost, that is very important, as you Honorable Prime Minister of India is also mentioning. We have to go for reducing the this input cost. So input efficient crops is very important. There we have to also reduce the use of the fertilizers, the irrigations, the water, adjust the nutrients. So that is very important for us. So we are also working in this aspect, that the crops would respond to the minimal inputs, which is very, very important for us. So that also we are doing.
So we are seeing several technological advancements across the sector, which is likely to impact the sector going forward positively. Mr. Behra, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us here on ET Now and helping us understand what the outlook for the horticulture sector looks like. But apart